about the water monster?
Nothing. It's dead. And besides, that Mysterio guy's all over it. Look, I just want to spend some time with MJ. We were talking about Paris, and I think she really likes me.
That's nice. It reminds me of when Betty and I first fell in love. I had just finished my fruit cobbler, right?
You're a very difficult person to contact, Spider-Man.
You're Nick Fury. You just shot Ned.
Just a mild tranquilizer. He'll be all right. So good to finally meet you. I saw you at the funeral, but I didn't think that was a good time to exchange numbers.
No, that would have been really inappropriate.
That's what I just said.
Right.
The important thing is, you're here. I tried to bring you here. You avoided me, and now you're here. What a coincidence.
Wait, was this a coincidence?
I used to know everything. Then I come back 5 years later, and now I know nothing. No intel, no team, and a high school kid is dodging my calls. Here's what I do know. A week ago, a village in Mexico was wiped out by a cyclone. Witnesses say that cyclone had a face. 3 days later, a similar event in Morocco. A village was...
Just making the rounds, see if anyone needs any emotional counseling after today's traumatic events.
No, we'll be okay. We're fine. Thank you.
Great, because I'm not qualified to actually... Oh, he's passed out. I'm not really qualified to do it anyway, so good night.
Where's my teacher? Sorry about that. You were saying?
A village was destroyed by what may well be another world-threatening...
Are you still awake? You're not answering any of my texts.
He's asleep, Betty.
Oh, already?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why it's imperative.
Hey boys, so that canal water today was filled with dangerous bacteria.
Another person touches that door, you and I are going to attend another funeral. Suit up.
Let me know if either of you develop vomiting.
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine, and welcoming a new guest today, a fellow podcaster as well, and that is WaysteLAN. How you doing today?
Doing pretty good.
Good. So before we get started with the movie today, I always like to talk with new guests and give them a chance to introduce themselves to the audience. So why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your show?
I'm I started podcasting pretty recently, like at the beginning of the year. And I think I've got about 6 episodes out. I work at a really demanding job. I work like 6 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I have time, I try my absolute best to at least do 1 or 2 episodes. I recently did an hour-long episode, and I tried out that format. But what I've been trying to do is make sort of like a curated podcast.
Okay.
So that when someone like goes to my Instagram and asks for any subject at all, because I try to cover everything from video games to science fiction to movies, and even what we're talking about right now, like comic book movies and comics and everything. So yeah, that's mostly what I do.
And what's the name of the show?
It's called WaysteLAN Party.
Okay.
Yeah, I have it on Spotify. I just got it on Apple Podcasts, thankfully.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm hoping to go on strong, trying to get 1 episode at least a month, possibly.
Good. How's the response been so far? Have people been enjoying it? People been commenting on it?
I had a few onlookers here and there. Right now, it's still at a steady crawl, but I'm pretty sure once I get like a small group of people that just enjoy curated shows, I guess, now I'm sure they'll go crazy with the comments and asking for stuff.
Good. Very cool. All right. So like you mentioned, we're going to be talking about Spider-Man today. We're going to be talking about Spider-Man Far From Home. Now, what is your history with Spider-Man?
Spider-Man, just like a lot of other people, have been our like most successful movie franchise superhero. Like a lot of people say, oh, it started with Iron Man. Well, at least for the MCU,
Mm-hmm.
But Spider-Man, I know with most people born around, I guess, the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
they adopted Spider-Man because he had his own show for a long time, and they would do crazy stuff in the show. They even started doing multiverse stuff before anyone even knew what that concept was, at
Right.
least show wise.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always impressed with the fact that out of all superheroes, he went the farthest for anonymity.
Mm-hmm.
And his powers weren't like Superman's power, where it's like, oh, Superman can just crush everything and anybody and fly anywhere and go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Spider-Man's very limited with what he can do, and I've always liked that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that show was kind of my introduction to the character as well. That was the 90s animated series on Fox, if I'm remembering correctly. And you're right, I didn't really realize that, but it really was. I mean, the X-Men had 1 or 2 episodes that dealt a little bit with alternate timelines, but it wasn't quite as extensive as Spider-Man did with those last 2 episodes, I think it was.
Yeah, I really enjoyed like when I saw that there was a multiverse where different like forms of him could have possibly existed with that weird spider that basically had Hulkoses but with fucking oh, by the way, I'm sorry. I was gonna ask.
You're fine. Don't worry.
Okay. I was like, oh, I cuss a lot of my.
That's
podcasts.
okay.
I
Yeah.
try not to too much, but when I'm passionate about something, I'll let in a couple cuss words every.
That's no problem. That's fine.
No, I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about the Spider-Man in the multiverse.
Yes. The Spider-Man with the Hulkoses, like that got me like that blew my mind. Like like instead of him just having like spider powers, kinda not really, he went into a full-on freaking tarantula. Like that's crazy. That's like worst case scenario for him.
Right. The man spider thing.
Yeah, that kind of stuff just blew my mind when I was a kid, and he was always a favorite. And I think he was also the first hero that got a different iteration of him, with Miguel O'Hara for Spider-Man 2099, the Spider-Man Noir, and Miles Morales also.
No, he wouldn't have been the first one. I think the Flash would have been the first one because you had the Golden Age.
Oh yeah,
Flash.
with
Right.
Wally West and what was the other one?
So Jay Garrick, Jay Garrick was the Golden Age one, and then the Silver Age one, introduced in the late 1950s, early 1960s, somewhere in that area. That was when Barry Allen came into the play. And that's the one that's on the TV show. That's the one in the movies, and he's the current Flash in the comics, I believe. I'm not currently up to date on the Flash stuff. And then Wally West was Kid Flash in the comics. He was Barry's sidekick, and then after Barry died in the 1980s in Crisis on Infinite Earths, then Wally became the Flash of like the mid to late 80s going forward up until Barry came back in the early 2000s, I believe.
Yeah, didn't Barry was the first one to time travel and all that stuff, right?
I don't know if he was the first Flash. I believe so. Yeah, I'm not sure if he was the first superhero to time travel though.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not sure. I'm like a moderate when it comes to my comic book knowledge. I try to keep up. You know, like it'd be a shame to call myself a geek and I didn't know at least the general knowledge from most comic books.
Well, that was actually going to be my next question. Is are you big on the Spider-Man comic books at all as well, or were you mostly just in the other media type of fit?
Well, I was real poor. I was real poor growing up, so I couldn't buy a single thing, and I grew up in a small town, which didn't have a comic book store, much less a bookstore or anything like that. So I would enjoy the Marvel, at least media, because I know Marvel made more cartoons before Justice League started off on Cartoon Network.
Right.
But yeah, so I guess that's the biggest fault. Is that's why I lean more towards Marvel. It's because I was introduced to Marvel first before DC came into play. But as for comics right now, I am really trying my best to get every single Miles Morales comic, because I think he might be my favorite one, mostly because I like his origin story a lot. Like, imagine being like seeing Spider-Man, the legend, and then you have to like fill those shoes,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have a villain as an uncle. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot more of a complicated history for him,
Yeah.
and that camo and Venom touch is just crazy. I love that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been a really good character. The good thing about that is I'm not sure if you're trying to get single issues or if you're going for the graphic novel trade paperbacks, but if you're going for the graphic novel route, I think all his stuff is actively in print, so you shouldn't have much trouble finding it all.
Yeah, I'm trying my best. Like, I recently, well, not recently, like before I knew the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was gonna come out, because I knew it was gonna be good. I don't know, some about, I think the trailer made me go, oh, this is gonna be a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I should get it's the same thing that happened with Deadpool. I was like, oh, Deadpool's gonna be a good movie. Maybe I should buy his first appearance.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get to do that with Deadpool, which regrettably it jumped from about 300 before the movie, and now it's like 600
Oh yeah,
with
yeah.
the CGC rating. But yeah, I was able to get the Ultimate Fallout first appearance of Miles Morales.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, both covers. So I just got to get them appraised, have them nicely hung up. So I'm real proud of those.
So you're going for the collector route, the single issue type stuff then, right?
If I can, because that's always such a hard uphill battle.
Right, yeah. I remember those days. I got out of that because after having to move several times, it was just too much to keep moving the collection with me. So
I bet.
Yeah, so I'm all digital myself now, which is much more convenient and much easier because I live in rural Japan, so there's no comic book shops out here.
Oh, flip.
But anyway,
Japan?
Yeah. But anyway, so you're talking about the Spider-Man movie, and I think one of the interesting things about the original Spider-Man movie that came out in 2002, if I'm remembering correctly, is that was really kind of the first superhero movie, big budget superhero movie, probably since Superman the movie, that really had the character really kind of embrace the idea of being a superhero, really embraced all the superhero tropes, because you had other ones like
he was a very humanized hero.
Right. And also they didn't shy away from the superhero elements, because if you look back at some of the other movies that were coming out before that, like the X-Men, they got rid of they didn't go into the costume route. They just went with the leather. They played it up more as being like a strike team, as opposed to being a superhero thing. You had the Batman stuff, but even those were very reluctant to go the full comic book route. But then even in Batman and Robin, they were still kind of like holding back. They were going with the black rubber suits instead of the more colorful costumes. Spider-Man, when that came out, I remember everybody wondering, well, how would they do the costume? Would they try to do like the black leather type of thing that was popular at the time? And I remember everybody was really kind of surprised when they released those first issues, and it was very much, accurate to the comics, obviously with, some live action touches like the raised webbing and all that kind of stuff. But other than that, it was
They did saturate the colors
a little bit. Yeah. So a little bit, but in general, it was very, very true to the comics design, which was no movie had really done that. No big budget movie had really done that since Superman the movie.
Yeah, that's true.
And then of course, we had those three movies, and then we had the two Andrew Garfield films, and then the Tom Holland films. And we're talking about the second one today, Spider-Man Far From Home, which was the first MCU movie that came out after Endgame. So that was the first one to kind of deal with all the fallout of Endgame. And that came out in summer 2019, I believe it was. So what was your initial opinion of this film when you saw it?
When I saw the trailer, when I saw it, period.
The film itself.
It's just so crazy. Like, I have so many like opinions about the whole movie entirely. I mean, when I first initially started seeing it, I thought, okay, I guess we're gonna see what happened once everyone came back from the Thanos bang.
Mm-hmm.
Or Thanos snap. Sorry about that. from my initial viewing of it, the first thought that came to mind was, I don't think Homecoming was even necessary with this movie.
Okay.
Yeah, because when I saw Homecoming and I saw the characters, I was like, oh, I think I know what happened. They're originally trying to create Miles Morales, because that's Miles Morales' world. That's his best friend. The MJ that's a makeshift MJ is originally. Let me look at my notes real quick. Initially, where is it? Where is it? Okay, there it is. Barbara Rodriguez. That's why
Okay.
she was like racially ambiguous,
Mhm.
the MJ in the MCU. But I can bet money that was going to be Barbara Rodriguez, and once they had gotten someone casted as Miles, they were going to go with Miles. But I'm guessing that the deals they were trying to make with Fox,
You mean
it was
Marvel?
very.
So oh,
Well, no, sorry,
no.
not.
Yeah. So the way
Sony.
it works. Yeah,
I
yeah.
keep on thinking it's Sony.
Yeah, a lot of people
Yeah.
make that mistake. Yeah, Sony owns the rights to the Spider-Man stuff, Marvel, and then they partnered with Marvel on this. Although I'm not sure if it was originally Sony's plan to go with Miles or not, or because I know that Marvel did do their own script, because part of the deal was that Marvel had full creative control over this movie. The whole idea was Marvel and Sony came to this agreement. So for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, Marvel doesn't own the rights to Spider-Man in the movies. They own the rights to the TV show, but the movie rights are still owned by Sony. And in fact, those are the only rights that Marvel has not yet fully gotten back. They've gotten the rights back to everything else with the Fox purchase, but Sony still holds the Spider-Man rights. And which is why, but Sony and Marvel have a much better working relationship than Marvel and Fox did.
Yeah.
So when they were actually doing the Amazing Spider-Man movie, when they were in putting those together, they were actually planning to have some synergy between that and Avengers. They were going to have Avengers or Stark Tower appear in the background of Amazing Spider-Man, and they were going to have the Oscorp Tower appear in the background of the Avengers. But scheduling conflicts got in the way. They weren't able to get their rendering schedules on the same schedule, so they weren't able to integrate them together. So and then after that, they just kind of like never even bothered. And when after Amazing Spider-Man 2 failed, Sony's plans to do this kind of integrated Spider-Man cinematic universe kind of died with it, and they were trying to figure out what to do next. And that was around the time when Marvel and them came to a deal where the deal was Marvel could use Spider-Man in the MCU projects, and they would put up part of the financing for solo Spider-Man movies and partner with Sony. But and then Marvel, and then the same Spider-Man actor would appear in both of them, which would allow Sony to use the MCU clout to kind of advertise their movies, and they would co-finance them, but Marvel would have full creative control over the Spider-Man solo movies. And then Sony still had free reign to do what they wanted with all the other stuff. So the Venom movies, the Morbius, all that kind of stuff, that's fully under Sony's control. Marvel has no direct involvement with those. So that was kind of the deal that they struck. So I'm not sure if it was so much that they were trying to do Miles and then changed it to Peter, or if it was just trying to do kind of a synthesis of the two and just pull in
I think
aspects.
it's just like plans that changed. I honestly think before they struck a sort of cooperative deal, that the next movie was really going to be a standalone Miles Morales movie. And then when that good synergy between Sony and Marvel worked out, they went, hey, you know what? How about we just make a whole new Spider-Man, a whole new Peter Parker Spider-Man, and then we'll roll with the punches later on. So they just plucked out Miles, placed Peter Parker in there, and went with the trilogy that we have right now.
Yeah, they did put some interesting aspects. I did think it was interesting how they redid Ned, and they gave him kind of the gank role and all that. I couldn't remember Barbara from the comics, so I didn't realize that she was similar to MJ. I just figured they were just doing a very different take on MJ.
Yeah, Barbara's only, I guess, normal love interest that Miles Morales has in all the comics.
Yeah,
So
because I remember
that was my best theory.
Right, maybe, yeah. I remember because the only ones. It's been a while since I've read those original comics. Mostly, I remember there was Kate. There was the Ultimate version of Kate Bishop, and there was kind of a thing with the Gwen Stacy Ghost Spider as well. But that was, I don't really remember all that much about Barbara. I haven't read those original Bendis Ultimate comics in years, so I have to probably go back and reread those at some point. But anyway, so I thought this was, one of the things I really think was cool about what the MCU has done with the Spider-Man movies is they're not so much Spider-Man solo films as they are kind of like the old Spider-Man team up comic books, where they're bringing in a different superhero to kind of, work with Spider-Man a little bit. So in Homecoming, we had Iron Man to a certain extent. In this one, we had Nick Fury, and again, to a certain extent. And then in No Way Home, there was not only Doctor Strange, but there was also the previous film Spider-Mans as well.
Yeah.
And I know some people have not liked that aspect of it, but I think it's been really kind of refreshing after, because we had 5 solo Spider-Man movies before this. So I've liked seeing, and Spider-Man's always been one of those characters in the comics who's very connected to the Marvel universe. Like so many of the Marvel characters got their start either in Marvel Team Up or in Spider-Man comic books. So I think it was a really cool thing to do, to have him be kind of like this central character in the MCU that touches all aspects.
Basically the MCU Fonz.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. What were so what do you think rewatching this film for this? Did anything that jumped out of you that didn't before, or anything that really you really wanted to focus on?
I think the biggest thing was mostly that with how perfectly done this movie is, because mind you, out of the trilogy, the new trilogy of Spider-Man, this one's my favorite.
Okay.
Because it has a little bit of everything and it's all perfectly balanced. There's actual consequences, which Marvel is just notorious for not doing. There's a good and cute, and I'm not someone that cares about love interest or love triangles, but they did a love triangle and a romantic story all rolled together with an action movie. Like that's crazy, especially when it's an MCU movie. Like they usually just generate romances out of nowhere, like with Bruce Banner and Black Widow, and then just toss it later on. Like the romance between MJ and Peter Parker in this one is just top notch, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is also just the chemistry between Tom Holland and Zendaya, which it's very similar to the kind of dynamic we saw with Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone. They have that kind of chemistry where, you see the two of them together on screen and you can't picture them not getting together. They just work so well on screen together.
Yeah, they love each other.
Yeah, which is why in both cases they ended up getting together in real life. So one of the things my opinion on this has cooled a little bit. It used to be when I first saw it, I did enjoy it more than Homecoming on first viewing. And also with No Way Home, first time I saw that, I enjoyed that more than the other two. But now in retrospect, because I just recorded an episode on No Way Home fairly recently, and now this one, I mean, don't get me wrong, I like all 3 of them. I think they're all great, but I think Homecoming has risen to still be my favorite of the 3, though. I was noticing as I'm watching it last night, there are some plot elements that don't quite link up, like the whole Quentin Beck and his crew, their whole plan, it seems to hinge on a lot of coincidence and a lot of happenstance, right? And it's this idea that I feel like the Tony Stark's whole idea of leaving the glasses and Edith system to Peter, it feels reckless. Even for Tony, it feels really reckless to leave all that power to a 16-year-old kid. That was something that on repeat viewings, it hasn't sat as well with me. And I thought too, the whole Mysterio's whole plan is, I'm going to go to Nick Fury. I'm going to convince him that I'm from this hero from another world here to avert danger and avert this catastrophe. And then he's going to bring in Spider-Man, and he's going to give Spider-Man the E to the system. And then I'm going to be able to trick Spider-Man into giving me the E to the system. It's just a lot of, it's a plan that it hinges on way too much on making a lot of predictions that don't seem very obvious. So I think there were some issues with that plotting aspect of it for me.
For me, I didn't think that entirely. It was a very simple plan, like become a sort of false hero, get inside Nick Fury's circle, and Nick Fury's circle, Spider-Man's there, and he knew that all he had to do was just make these catastrophes be close to where Spider-Man is, and they would eventually need him. And like being a cool older brother isn't that hard of a thing to do, especially when a kid is a superhero. When a kid's a superhero, he feels like he's overwhelmed, like there's too much for him. And when you have like a cool older brother just come up to you and be like, hey, it's not so bad, I got you. Like that alone, he knew that would work. Like just saying, I got you, to someone that feels as overwhelmed as this Peter Parker Spider-Man, made the plan just perfect. Like,
yeah,
like
I mean,
that scene, that notorious scene of when the holograms all go away and it was all just a trick, which is beautiful. It's a
great scene. And both Jake Gyllenhaal and Tom Holland, they sell it every time, which is why it didn't hit me at the first time. And even after I've seen this movie, I think like 2 or 3 times since before, but last night I'm watching it with a much more critical eye. And I get what you're saying, but it just feels like, I don't know what would make Beck think that if I get in Nick Fury's circle, he'll automatically go to Spider-Man. It depends. You have to have this situation where there's no other heroes. And I also don't really see how he knows that Spider-Man is part of that inner circle, or how he knows that, because all of this hinges on the fact that there's no other hero that Nick Fury can turn to. And I think that is it happens because the story needs it to happen, is what I'm saying. It doesn't happen in an organic way. It feels,
normally I would agree with you, because a lot of the MCU movies do that. But what I liked about this one is that they sort of set it up in a way where they've been just lying in waiting for the perfect time. And so where most people be like, oh, this is a coincidence, you're making it happen, this could have been 20 years from now. Him and his team would have been waiting silently for a time where they can get him and Spider-Man together, because during the Revelation little scene, it shows a whole bunch of Stark former employees,
right,
that were just knee deep in Stark's tech as well as his business. So I mean, they had easy access to not only know exactly who Spider-Man is, but to know how close he was to him, how I guess he sees him kind of like a son. In this one, the relationship between Iron Man, Spider-Man in the MCU is a little like forced fatherly bonding. I don't think that was done that well, but the plot says that Iron Man gives the not the throne, what's the word I'm looking for,
the crown,
I guess, to Peter to be a new head of Stark Industries. But as we can see, that's what they were waiting for, because they saw it coming the whole time. They were just waiting from all the movies since who knows when, even probably Iron Man 1. They've just been lying in wait, waiting to find a way to get Stark's company, whichever way possible.
Yeah, I just feel that it was, I get what you're saying. I just feel the movie didn't do a very good enough job of explaining that for my taste. I would have liked a little bit more to really take it out of that coincidence area and really kind of make it feel that it was a much more organic thing. Although I did love that scene when they reveal them, and we did get the actor back from who's had this bit part in the first Iron Man movie, and they brought him back for that. I did like that touchstone. I did like that they brought it back to they worked in Mysterio's origin into the barf system that Tony uses in Civil War. All of that was, really great uses of MCU continuity. It's just that the way it came together in the end, it felt a little bit forced for my taste is all.
Okay. I mean, everyone's inclined to their
opinion. Anyway, another thing too, I feel like the use of Nick Fury in this was an interesting choice. The fact that it's not actually Nick Fury, it's actually Talos the entire time.
My God! Like, wow! Like, you finish your bit because I'm gonna go crazy with that one.
Okay, yeah, because the entire time I'm watching the movie, I'm like, Nick Fury really seems to be kind of not up on his game in this. So I thought that was, and then when they reveal it's Talos actually at the end, I thought that was a pretty good little misdirection. Although it did make me kind of wistful that we didn't get to see the actual Nick Fury interact with Spider-Man. We only got to see the shapeshifter pretending to be Nick Fury.
Yeah.
But you go ahead. What were you going to say about that?
No, just that whole idea, the fact that he was a Skrull at a certain point, it just raises so many questions. Like, how many times does he do this? Does he do this often? How long has he been doing this? Was he like this in this movie, in that movie, in this movie? So I guess at any time when we feel like Nick Fury was slightly dumb, it can just be explained with his doppelganger. Like, I love that so much.
And that's something that comes from the comic books. Nick Fury has done that a lot in the comic books when he's been presumed dead, he's been acting weird. And in the comics, it was LMDs in that case, life model decoys. So robots that are designed to look exactly like him. And they've used those a lot in the comic books. So that's also kind of a nice little callback to a recurring trope in the books as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So like there have been several times when Fury has been presumed dead or something like that, and it turns out it was just a life model decoy that died. It wasn't the real Nick Fury. Or other times when he's been acting kind of weird, and later on they just kind of wrote that off. It's like, oh, that was just an LMD. So a lot of times when you've seen Nick Fury appear in the comic books, you don't know if it's actually Nick Fury or if you're dealing with a robot.
Yeah. One thing I really like about this movie is the way it just opens up to like the school news bulletin report. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a single movie do that.
Yeah, and I was watching that and I thought it was kind of funny because it's so student film, like right down to using Comic Sans font or using the image from a Google search where it still has the Getty watermark on it. So I thought those were nice little touches.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Like, that's a fun way of like identifying with the viewer and like bringing it down back to earth, because,
right,
all these movies are otherworldly.
Yeah, and I thought the way they use Flash Thompson in these movies, especially in this movie, is kind of interesting because he's got that scene at the end when they come back, and because I did think it was interesting that Flash isn't really the antagonist character, the civilian antagonist for Peter in this. It's more the Brad character. No, excuse me. It's more the Brad character who's like that civilian antagonist for Peter. Whereas usually in the comics, that would have been Flash would have been a better fit for that role. But I did think I noticed something here this time when he comes home and there's this this driver who's waiting for him, and Flash says mother couldn't make it, and I realized they kind of made the Flash in this movie, he's kind of almost like a cross between Flash and Harry Osborn in a way.
Yeah. But if I'm correct, I think Flash Thompson was one of the iterations of Venom. And I think he's also another supervillain or superhero. I can't remember, but I remember they used Flash Thompson for a specific arc.
Not a villain, but he did become a host for the Venom symbiote, and that was in the I want to say mid early 2000s, when they gave him the Venom symbiote, and he was using it as in his role working for the government, actually, because he was a soldier, and he did that. It was a really good run. It was Rick Remender wrote most of that series, and then eventually the symbiote went back to Eddie Brock. Flash ended up getting bonded with the anti-Venom symbiote, which was still using it as kind of like a hero role. So he was using villain touches, but he wasn't actually a villain. He was more
There you go.
repurposing them
That's
as
probably where they're going with that. He's probably going to be the anti-Venom once they eventually. I mean, they already teased that at the end of No Way Home.
oh, with the
Venom
little bit
symbiote
of
is
yeah.
on Earth. Yeah.
I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see, because I don't really picture that actor really fitting that version of Venom. But we'll see what they do with it. I mean, so far, I mean, I also wouldn't have pictured Zendaya as Mary Jane, and they really made that work, even though she's technically not Mary Jane. She's Michelle Jones. That's another story.
Yeah, but I also like at the beginning where, like, because the thing about, and this is something Stanley also said about Spider-Man, when he made Spider-Man, he made him completely anonymous, covering every part of his skin, because he wanted kids to feel like that's them.
Right.
And even in the comics, he has all the troubles of a regular kid, etc., etc. And I think this movie really did it the best out of the whole trilogy. It brought it back to his regular trials and tribulation of being a teenager, like having this one girl that you would do anything to be with, and just planning a whole trip to maybe give her a gift, and at the end I give to her and it's broken, but you still end up together. Like, it's a really nice human story for Peter Parker, because that's one thing I noticed reading the Spider-Man comics, that they would lean more into Peter Parker's life than Spider-Man's life.
Yeah, the comics are very much basically, which is why I think one of the biggest, not failings, but I guess drawbacks of the movies is that you don't have the room to really kind of explore the relationship side, the human side that you would, because if you go back and you look at the Spider-Man comic books, they're essentially a soap opera with occasional superheroics. And the best way to really do that with Spider-Man, I've always believed, is to do it in a TV series, because you can do the episodic stories, you can build on the relationships, you can build up the supporting cast. It's a lot harder to do that in a series of movies. You can get some of it, but it's not quite the same aspect of it.
Yeah, I honestly feel that if I had it my way, all comic book heroes would have I don't know if you've seen Community. 6 seasons in a movie. That's the rule of thumb for me. Like, if you want to develop a character or a bunch of characters and have them be these characters that people are really attached to, and then build up what they are in the series, and then have the movie be their big triumphant boom multi-million-dollar hit, and then finish it up. But who knows how long these MCU movies are going to last.
Right. I mean, I think there are some heroes that the movie format works better for, when you've got the big, kind of like the big world-ending threat, like the Avengers type stuff, or Superman. Although Superman and Lois is doing better as a TV show than they've ever done in the movie, so what do I know with that? But you've got the Avengers, which that works much better as a movie type franchise. You've got
I agree.
Captain America, I think, as well. Iron Man, they work really good in the movie settings. Thor as well. But when you get down to the more street level heroes, or the more ensemble cast, when you're thinking about like the X-Men, works much better as an episodic series. Spider-Man, Daredevil, all those kinds of things, they work so much better in more short format, episodic, serialized storytelling, I think.
Yeah, I agree. One thing I also really liked about this Spider-Man is they really developed that relationship between not MJ, but yes, MJ, because the whole plot of most of the story is this trip, and he's just so excited to possibly have MJ be his girlfriend.
Mhm.
And I thought that really brought him down to the teenage level that they've been trying to convey, which they
Right.
couldn't really, like. Homecoming was kind of like a one and done with a.
Liz?
Was that the girl that he liked?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And they just toss her aside at the end. Like they didn't even use her to her full development or
Mhm.
anything. They just go like, oh, you know, that's just a chick he liked once, you know, and he got to meet the Vulture. And that could have been done in a TV show or anything. I mean, it didn't really have any big, like, there was no big, like, there's nothing that happened afterwards that made a difference. Like, if you were to just see like Far From Home,
Mhm.
and you never saw Homecoming, you didn't miss anything on Homecoming. I
Mm.
mean, his interest for MJ didn't even start until they hinted it at the end of Homecoming.
I don't know if I
And
go that far because I think there's a definite progression of his character in Far From Home that you don't quite get to without the foundation laid in Homecoming in terms of his journey as a hero. Because in Homecoming, the whole idea was he's basically, he's learning how to crawl. He's kind of learning the ropes, and he tries to go too fast, and it blows up in his face. And it's that failure in Homecoming, I think, really informs a lot of the decisions he makes in Far From Home, where he, now he's overly cautious. Now he's too worried about doing the wrong thing, so he gives it over to the first guy he meets, who who seems more the part of a hero. So it's more about him learning how. The first movie was learning about his limitations. This movie was learning about what it takes to be a hero, what a hero actually is. And I think if you don't have that first step, that foundation in Homecoming, the growth in here doesn't work as well.
I mean, that's a good point right there.
But one of the things I did love, especially, I think maybe my favorite thing about this movie is Jake Gyllenhaal's performance. Like the way he plays Mysterio, like you said earlier on, the whole Big Brother aspect, the way he ingratiates himself to Peter, it works so well. He really does a great job of selling that. Like right from the start, when Peter's just kind of rattling off and going into science geek mode when he meets everyone else, and everyone else is kind of like giving him the side eye. But then Beck comes up to me, he's like, "Hey, never apologize for being the smartest guy in the room," and he's like kind of taking it.
Yeah,
he's
that was
taking him under
delivered
his wing.
perfectly.
Right? Yeah, I thought Jake Gyllenhaal did such a good job, and it's funny because at one point Jake Gyllenhaal was actually in the running for Spider-Man. Back when they were filming Spider-Man 2, there was some worry. This was a rumor. I'm not sure if it was actually under serious consideration or if it was just a rumor, but Toby had injured himself filming Seabiscuit, and with Spider-Man 2 filming right after, there was concern that his injuries wouldn't heal in time to be able to do Spider-Man 2. So, and again, I'm not sure if this is rumor. I'm not sure if this was actually true, but what I remember at the time is there was talk about Jake Gyllenhaal possibly replacing Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 2.
Oh, that would have. I mean, I love Jake Gyllenhaal, and I think he would have done a great job. But I'm all for continuity.
Yeah. He would have definitely made an interesting Spider-Man, I think, especially back in those days. So it is cool that they kind of got him to play another character in the Spider-Man mythos instead. And like, I'm not sure if you're very familiar with Mysterio in the comic books, but he was never really that impressive to me as a villain. I mean, he's okay, but I think there are definitely other villains that I'm more fond of.
Yeah, I think his original origin was that he was a failed actor / special effects.
Yeah, he was a failed special effects artist.
Yeah, and like he was butt ugly, so he couldn't make it as an actor.
Mhm.
And so he decided he wanted to be popular, so he decided to be kind of like the new Spider-Man, to the point where he drove Peter Parker as Spider-Man a little bit nuts,
Mhm.
and made him think that he had a split personality or something. And like I forgot how it went exactly, but he basically made Spider-Man look like a punk, and then he was gonna rise as Mysterio as a better hero and
Mhm.
take his place, but then became a villain and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, that's not a very cool sort of origin like the Green Goblin or
Mhm.
like the Lizard and all those, which are like bioengineered psychopaths.
Right.
This is just a regular dude, just doing special effects. I think he used hypnosis and suggestion or something like that to mess with Spider-Man.
Those are, yeah, I think those are some. I don't remember I don't recall the specific story you're talking about, but it's been a long time since I've read some of those earlier
That's
comic
his
books.
first, yeah, his first origin, his first
Okay.
appearance. It was
Okay,
that one,
yeah. Yeah, I haven't read that in a long time, so I don't recall that one. But yeah, he has used like hypnotic gases and stuff like that in the past, and hallucinogens. But I thought one of my favorite scene in this movie, definitely bar none, is that sequence when Mysterio's using all the illusions on him in Berlin.
Oh
I
yeah,
thought
that's
that was just brilliantly done, and the way how it works so well, because it, like when he jumps after MJ and he thinks he's jumping down this long tower and he just falls right on the ground right away. They're one of the downfalls when you're doing that kind of illusion in movies and in comic books, anywhere really in storytelling, is they make the illusion seem like it's altering reality itself when it's not. This did a
Yeah.
really good job of showing that he's still in these real areas. It's just he can't see what's going on around him.
yeah. The holograms are just so good that and so well planned out that they're able to make him fall off a building,
Mm-hmm.
get run over by a train. Like that, I love that last part where he got run over by a train, and then Mysterio's just like laughing it off, like he
Mhm.
won. Like that's beautiful. That's excellent villain work.
Yeah.
That's taking a, no offense to anyone that's a Mysterio fan out there, but that's taking a almost trash super villain and making them like elevating it, like with Heath Ledger's Joker, and
Mhm.
Joker just from the comics is beautiful and crazy and awesome and fun, but Heath Ledger just elevates him into an even more twisted, psychotic villain that like it's hard to look at the old comic book Joker the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you
Mhm.
can't look back at the origin Mysterio and be like, this isn't the same guy. I want the Jake Gyllenhaal Mysterio, the clever guy that knows exactly what you're gonna do at all times, and at the end still gets their upper hand.
Mhm.
I love that.
Yeah, that ending it's still, such a great ending when, his last stab at Peter Parker is he reveals his identity to the world. And also this is the first time we got J.K. Simmons back as J. Jonah Jameson, is more of an Alex Jones type of character, which I thought was such a neat little twist. And when they had said that, I remember sitting in the theater when that scene happened, and because I think if I recall correctly, you actually hear his voice like a split second before you see his face, and as soon as I heard the voice, I'm like, holy shit, they're doing it, and then you see him. The only thing, and I said this when we talked about No Way Home, the only thing I miss about it is I miss the flat top. I wish they'd put that old hairpiece on him from the Raimi
I
movies.
do miss that. Yeah, because that's his signature crew cut look.
Yeah, I did miss that. But other than that, I mean, J.K. Simmons, that's like perfect casting for. I don't know. It's tough to think.
No one else can do it. They
no
even
one else can
use
do
them
it.
in
Yeah.
the Spider-Man games.
Yeah, I mean, I
that's
think
his voice.
Yeah. I mean, I can. There have been other actors who have been playing a lot of these different characters. Like Christopher Reeve is the gold standard, but Tyler Hoechlin's a really good follow-up. Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, they've all got their strengths as Spider-Man. But it's hard to think of any other actor who could do Jameson as well as J.K. Simmons does.
Yeah, I've been told that Tobey Maguire is the best Peter Parker. Andrew Garfield is the best Spider-Man, and why did I blank on his name?
Tom Holland.
Tom Holland. Yeah, Tom Holland is the best of both. He mixes both perfectly.
Yeah, that's always been my thing too. Is Tobey Maguire is so good at playing a geek. He fits that mold perfectly. Like That scene when he's in Spider-Man 2, when he meets Octavius for the first time and he's geeking out over the fusion reactor, like that is Toby really sells the idea that he's a science geek. You really believe that he's really into this stuff. Yeah. Andrew Garfield is, but when it came to Spider-Man, Toby was not really good. And part of that, I think, is also just the Sam Raimi's sense of humor. Is he's got a very campy sense of humor. He doesn't really quite have that kind of sarcastic wit, and Toby doesn't really have that in it to deliver those lines as they need to be delivered. So his jokes as Spider-Man always fell kind of flat with me. Andrew was awesome as Spider-Man. He had the wit, he had the timing, he had that all done down perfectly.
He had the pizzazz and
yeah. But he's almost too charming is the thing. So when he's playing Peter Parker, it's hard to buy him as this, this outcast nerdy character. It feels more that he's an outcast by choice as opposed to being forced into being an outcast.
I agree.
Whereas Tom, he gets both those aspects. He's able to really lean into the geeky side. And, I mean, you said that you didn't quite buy the Tony Peter relationship. For me, I thought it made total sense. And I thought Tom really did a good job of selling that because, when you think about it, especially in the timeline of the MCU, he would have been a little kid when Iron Man first appeared. So it totally makes sense that he grows up idolizing this science superhero guy. And then when he actually meets him, they develop this bond. I thought that worked really well in the context of the MCU. And then when you see him as Spider-Man, like he's funny, he's awkward, he's got that, you can tell he's using humor as a way to cover up the fact that he's scared shitless all the time. And that's one of the things that Spider-Man does in the comic books. Whereas Andrew felt more naturally funny. It just felt like an outlet for him. For Tom, it really feels like he's using humor to cover up the fact that he's scared out of his mind.
Yeah, and that in spirit is the perfect Spider-Man.
Right. I mean, I always think about that scene in Civil War when he appears and he's so awkward even when he's Spider-Man. Like he webs the shield up and he's like, hey, Captain, big fan. I'm Spider-Man. And just he feels so out of place.
Yeah. Like another thing about this movie that I really like is usually with No Way Home, you get a lot of Peter Parker. And then I also think in Homecoming, you get a little bit more Spider-Man, but it's not necessarily doing much. Mm-hmm. I think in this one, it had the perfect marriage of both. Mm-hmm. Also, I think every single, besides Homecoming, even Homecoming, every single one of those movies had an alternate Spider-Man costume.
Yeah, they in fact, No Way Home had a bunch of different ones when you think about it in retrospect.
Yeah, and I really like that. What they call him? Something monkey?
The Night Monkey.
Night Monkey, yes. That I really like that suit.
Yeah, the Night Monkey suit was really cool, and I thought it was. I'm glad that they'd worked that in where Peter reminds him like, hey, look, I'm Peter Parker, and I'm on a field trip with my school. In the last movie, I was on a field trip with my school, and Spider-Man showed up. If I'm in a field trip with my school and Spider-Man shows up again, it's gonna look suspicious. So I thought that was a really good thing for the movie to address.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And even when the way Mysterio even got his name, because most of the times, if you noticed in the MCU movies, they never show the villain's comic book name, with a couple of exceptions, but this one actually did. Right. Not only did it address his name that people would know him by, but the person that is that villain, which is Mysterio. In Italian, Mysterio means mystery. Like I thought that was just wow, like wham bam, like that's the best way to give someone their names. Like he first appeared in Italy and they called the Man of Mystery Mysterio, and then even Peter Parker brings it up to him. It's like, oh, you're Mysterio. It's like, oh, I like it, I'm gonna stay as Mysterio. I was like, that's how you do it. Even though he had a tiny little arc and he died at the end, that's the way you name a villain right there in a movie. At least
that worked really well. I thought that was a nice little touch. I also want to talk a little bit about some of the, like, one of the things I love about these movies is Martin Starr as the teacher, just because I'm not sure if you've ever if you know him from his earlier work, like when he was on Freaks and Geeks or anything like that. But it's so funny to see him in this movie because I primarily associate him with Freaks and Geeks, where he played like this geeky high school student, and now he's I see him as the teacher in these movies. So it's a really kind of funny little comparison.
Yeah, they did a real good job with the teachers, both of them, and their commentate. I knew they probably let them ad lib a lot with their lines.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, it was really really funny. Like it added more to like the grounded feeling you got when it would switch from Spider-Man scenes, Peter Parker scenes. Like it brought you right back to Earth, like with no jet lag. Like this, just nicely done all around.
Right. I also like Happy Hogan. Jon Favreau is Happy. I thought he's a nice little addition to Spider-Man's world in these movies because, you know, he was very much in the background in the Iron Man movies. Part of that is because Favreau directed the first two, and he didn't, you know, he's just going to be a background character. He's not going to have a big role in the films. And then to see him get a bigger part, because I think people forget that Favreau is a really good comedic actor too.
Yeah, he is. I know I will always respect Favreau, especially with what he's been doing with the Mandalorian. And like I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Like Star Wars is one of the, at least Hollywood-wise, it's the most disrespected franchise out there. Like it deserves more respect, and they don't get the right people to do it. But Jon Favreau, he respected the medium. He knew what he was working with. He knew the importance of what he was working with, and he did perfection. And everyone loves it. Like no complaints all around. And yeah, I'll always respect the guy for that because that's how you do it. And we need more directors like him.
Okay. Anything else you wanted to mention about Far From Home?
I really like I said, the biggest thing that made me love this movie were the permanent consequences. One, with Aunt May dying, and two, with him being revealed at the end. Like,
Aunt May dying, that came in the next one.
Oh, sorry. Oh my God, I'm confused. I guess because I saw them one right after the other.
Yeah.
That's why I got confused. But still, permanent consequences at the end. After and plus, I really liked that long action scene where he was fighting the drones. I could have sworn I was watching the animated series with all the banter. He was having banter with drones. I mean, like Tom Holland, like clap, just clap on that.
Yeah, the last scene, I think this is a big problem I have with a lot of the Marvel movies is sometimes the middle fight scene is so well executed that the climactic fight scene doesn't quite live up to it, at least in my mind. And I kind of felt that way with this too. Like the drone scene is great, but when you compare it to the earlier scene with Mysterio and the illusions, that was so brilliantly done that I loved. Like that one is just that it's so perfect that I don't think anything they did in the climactic scene could have surpassed it.
What? Like I mean, all those drones he was just destroying one after another, running out of webbing halfway through, having to go through that hallway of just death. Like that was great. That was so crazy.
I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying like I like the earlier fight scene with Mysterio a lot more. And it's
you like that magic stuff.
Yeah, I do. But I thought it was a lot. It was such a good execution of Mysterio's illusions, whereas the climatic fight scene, it felt just it didn't have that same impact as the earlier scene did. And that's something I've noticed with a lot of the Marvel stuff is there's the middle fight scene, which is really, really well done, that it doesn't quite match up when they get to the final fight scene. The exception being Endgame, of course. Infinity War as well. Like that final fight scene was definitely much better too. But yeah, that was just something that I felt rewatching this again. Something else too, I wanted to talk briefly about the costume he puts on at the end of the movie. You know, the black suit. What do you think of that?
the black suit at the end of.
Right, the black and red suit.
Oh yeah, I remember now. I wasn't a big fan because that's technically Miles Morales' suit.
Mm-hmm.
So I for one didn't really care for the design. I like his original suit. This one had the little glider wings. That was cool. I like that, like the Amazing Spider-Man. But other than that, I did prefer. I forgot the red and black suit, but yeah, I preferred if he would have even just stayed with the Night Monkey suit.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I like this one. It was a nice callback to the original comics, because in the original issues, the blue and the suit was actually black. It was just blue was just used for highlights because the coloring process was not very sophisticated in comics back then. So
I do remember that.
Yeah, so it was I thought it was a nice callback to the original Ditko design of the black and red. One thing I didn't like about it is the white spider on the back just feels a little out of place. And I didn't really,
it does.
Yeah. And it feels, if that had been red or if it had just been, excised completely, I think it would have worked a lot better.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much all that I have to say about Far From Home. If you were going to rank this with all the Spider-Man movies, where do you think you would put this?
Oh,
and I'm not talking about,
Spider-Mans?
not just MCU, but I mean all of them.
Ooh, I think I'm gonna be real ballsy and say number 1.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I would not put it that high. I think I'd probably put it maybe 3 or 4. I think I would probably put it maybe 4 or 5, 3 to 5, somewhere in that range. I'd probably put it like right in the middle. It's good, but I think there's some stuff that jumps out to me a lot more on repeat viewings that didn't before.
What's your number 1?
Number 1 would be a toss-up between Homecoming and Spider-Man 2. I'd go back and forth between those two.
Spider-Man 2 was good.
Yeah.
It was good. Yeah. That's tough.
Okay. So why don't you tell people where they can find your podcast?
My podcast is on Spotify and I think mostly all platforms, Stitcher, Apple Music. It's tough though because you gotta spell my name a little weird, which is WaysteLAN. So it's misspelled as hell. But yeah, it's that and party. So it's WaysteLAN party with an exclamation mark at the end. Hopefully you can find it, and hopefully you like it.
We'll have a link to it in the show notes, so it'll definitely be in. So if anyone's looking for the podcast, they can find the link in our show notes. And but yeah, thanks so much, and thanks for coming on to talk about Spider-Man Far From Home. And good luck with your show. I hope you're able to get more episodes out and you're able to find a following with it.
Oh, thank you, Perry. And if you ever need me again, I'm always free.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, that does it for this episode of Superhero Cinephiles. SuperheroCinephiles.com is our website. We are Super Cinema Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Superhero Cinephiles on Facebook as well. And if you go to our Patreon, you can sign up at any level, $1 a month, $5 a month, whatever it is. You get these episodes a week early. And we got some other Patreon exclusive content coming out soon. Thanks so much for listening, and we will talk to you next time. If you enjoy the Superhero Cinephiles, then you'll also love my companion podcast, the Superhero Cinephiles Book Club. All my Patreon subscribers get access to this exclusive podcast where I review superhero comics and graphic novels. Not sure what comics you want to read next or what you should dive into? I've got you covered on that. I'll be doing reviews, recommendations, and also talking to you about useful entry points if you're interested in reading some comics but don't know where you should start. Plus, you'll get access to all episodes of the main show a week before everyone else. On all of this for as little as just $1 a month. All you have to do is go to patreon.com/supercinemapod and you can sign up at any subscription amount to get started. Thanks so much for your support, and please don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you for listening. And as always, good night, good evening. God bless.